After making a few videos about the DJI RS2, one of my most commonly asked questions in the comments was how do I use my RS2 with the RavenEye and using an external monitor or recorder like the Ninja 5. I originally thought this setup was going to be way too large, but after I used my monitor on my gimbal, I thought adding the RavenEye and one more cable to unlock ActiveTrack and all the features that the RavenEye gives you wouldn't really be that much more. So I went out and tested a ton of cables and tried to see which would fit this setup best, and I think I've come across a really solid setup if you want to use your RS2, RavenEye, and a monitor. So let's take our gimbal apart and I'll go over all the components while we're building it. Now that our camera's disassembled, let's start with the monitor arm. This is the one that I landed on because it comes with the adapter that you need to mount it to the NATO plate, but it comes with the two M2 or M3 screws that you can mount on the side. But after that mount is there, you can assemble and disassemble this with just your fingers, not using the tools that are included. You can, however, use the included Allen wrench if you want to get this really tight and put it through the holes in here and use the Allen wrench for more leverage to tighten this down. But this has little grooves that actually feed into each other, and as long as it's like kind of snug, it won't go anywhere. So I like to mount this flat. You can mount it in a lot of different directions, but I like to mount it flat, so if I do want to mount something on the cold shoe, that it's easily accessible from the top. There's also 3/4 20s on here, so if you have friction arms or lights or anything you want to mount to it, that is an option as well. And the best part of this monitor arm, in my opinion, is that you can take your recorder and mount it to the bottom, and you don't have to have Allen wrenches on deck like some other ones do. You can just use your fingers to hand tighten this, and once it's on there, you can move it and it stays in place. I've seen a lot of other monitor arms that once you have your monitor on the arm and you go to adjust it, it will not stay in place. If you want to permanently put this in one location though and not move it at all, you can put it where you want to, and with this Allen key, just tighten it down as much as you want. Over time, if you move this up and down a lot, you will have to tighten this screw here, but it is not very difficult, and it's a pretty common Allen wrench size, so that's nice. And again, if your Ninja is moving side to side and you can't get this any tighter with your fingers, you can use your Allen key, put it through the knurled knob, and just literally tighten this with the leverage of the Allen key and get this really tight. I like cranking this thing down so it doesn't move, and the only reason I do it with my Ninja is because I have it in a cage. I wouldn't recommend clamping this thing down if you're just using the 1/4 20 on top of your Ninja, because you could strip it out. But if it's in a cage and I strip out the cage, there's 2 or 3 other 1/4 20s right next to it, or I could just buy a new cage and my Ninja isn't damaged. Now we'll attach our HDMI cable from our camera to our recorder. I'm using the Ninja 5 that uses a full-size HDMI, and I'm using the Sony a7 III for this video, so that is a mini or micro HDMI. So make sure you buy the right connections for your camera. Notice I'm using this coiled cable, and that will become more evident why I'm doing that in a little bit. But next, we're going to attach our RavenEye to the HDMI out of our recorder. Our image is going out of our camera into our monitor, out of our monitor into the RavenEye. So most monitors and recorders have full-size HDMIs, and the RavenEye has a mini HDMI. So make sure you are buying the correct cable if you go to buy this. So after we balance our camera in the current state with the cables coming from the camera, now you're going to see why it's so important to have these coiled cables. They're not really pulling on the ports of the camera or the RavenEye, so it's much easier, but we can still move the camera around because we have slack in the coil to actually move around before we put a lot of stress on those ports. Honestly, I wouldn't move too far just because I don't want to damage any of the ports on these, but if you have to move, you totally can. I wouldn't recommend doing it all the time just to alleviate some of those stress on those ports again. But while you are having this setup, you can ActiveTrack. I'm just gonna ActiveTrack the camera. So just to prove that this is all set up and working, I'm not moving at all and I'm active tracking the camera. So this A7 III should be pointed at you guys at all times now. So this is pretty cool, but when I'm using this, I again really want to minimize the amount of stretch that I'm putting on these coiled cables. I do not want to just active track an active subject with this, set it down and then just walk away, because your camera is going to be adjusting and putting a lot of tension on your ports. So this is more of an active filming style. So if your subject is moving, I would actually track the subject and only rely on the RavenEye to do little minor adjustments and keep the subject in frame. Again, this was not something that I planned on putting together, but so many of you asked for it that I decided to buy the cable and put this together for you. So I will leave links to all these cables that I'm using in the description below. I did go through a couple of different cables before I found the proper length. I forget the exact length of these two cables, but again, I'll leave those links in the description below for you. I've made a few other DJI RS2 videos, so I will leave that linked in a playlist below as well. And if you guys have any other questions about the RS2 and rigging things or anything like that, leave me a comment, and I am actively making more RS2 videos right now. I'm currently working on a Sony setup video. I tried to stay away from making specific setup videos, but I have a A6400, an A7 III, and an A7S III. So I think those are like three nice broad categories of Sony cameras that people have been asking about. So there's a lot of little quirks with these cameras, like filming in certain resolutions with HDMI out over a USB-C with a camera control cable is going to black the screen out on some camera models. That is testing that I have to do, and it's taking forever. So make sure to subscribe and check back to the channel when I post those videos. I've had a ton of questions specifically regarding Sony cameras, but I don't have any other brands of cameras, and I've been asked about Nikons and Canons and Fujis. So if you own any of those, make sure to check out the comments of my videos, because there's actually a lot of people asking about how those cameras work with the RS2, and I would love to answer them, but I just don't have access to those cameras. So if you can help some of the community members, that would be awesome. I don't want to leave anyone hanging, but for now, I'm just focusing on the Sony cameras. Kind of a quicker video, but this was a really requested setup from the community, and this was not something that I would put together myself, but after putting it together, I really do see the value in something like this. If you're interested in external recording while using ActiveTrack, this is actually a really attractive setup. So thank you guys for your feedback. And if you enjoyed this video, check out some of my other videos and share them with a friend. If you didn't enjoy this video, share it with someone you don't like. Thanks for sticking around to the end, and I'll see you in the next one.